This is African American History is American History.
The director of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee's voter registration project in Mississippi, Robert Moses.
The young people working with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC as we call it, are characterized by restless energy, radical change in race relations in the United States. Their world is upset, and they feel that if they are ever going to get it straight, they must upset it more.
An inspiring educator and civil rights activist, Robert Parris Moses is known for his courageous work on voter education and registration in Mississippi during the early 1960s, as well as his co-founding of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, and as a leader of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. He worked tirelessly to empower disenfranchised individuals and communities. With his vision of grassroots community-based leadership, Bob Moses became one of the most influential Black leaders of the civil rights movement. In 1946, the U.S. Supreme Court banned segregation on all interstate bus travel. And in 1960, the Supreme Court's Boynton versus Virginia decision extended that earlier ruling to include bus terminals, restrooms, and other facilities associated with interstate travel. However, the Deep South felt that integrated restrooms was a bridge too far and totally ignored the ruling. The Freedom Riders were groups of Black and white civil rights activists who participated in bus trips throughout the South to protest segregated bus terminals. The Freedom Rides began in May of 1961 and ended late that same year. The rides were organized by the Congress of Racial Equality's National Director, James Farmer. Their mission: to test compliance with the two Supreme Court rulings. On May 4th, 1961, a group of 7 African Americans and 6 whites left Washington, D.C. on an exercise of their constitutional rights, called Freedom Rides. Many of the riders were still teenagers and needed their parents' permission to take part in the protests. Many were college students, like a young man named John Lewis, who would go on to be elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in November of 1986. Unfortunately, we lost Representative Lewis to cancer in 2020. They left in 2 Greyhound buses bound for New Orleans. When they stopped along the way, white riders used facilities designed for Blacks and vice versa, all the while knowing that this act of peaceful protest could and did have violent consequences. The group traveled through Virginia and North Carolina, drawing little public notice. The first violent incident occurred on May 12th in Rock Hill, South Carolina. John Lewis, who at the time was a seminary student and member of SNCC, white freedom rider and World War II veteran Albert Bigelow, and another Black rider, were viciously attacked as they attempted to enter a whites-only waiting area. The next day, the group reached Atlanta, Georgia, where some of the riders split off onto a Trailways bus. Along their routes, the riders were met with intimidation, beatings, and prison sentences. On May 14th, 1961, the Greyhound bus was the first to arrive in Anniston, Alabama. There, an angry mob of about 200 white people surrounded the bus, forcing the driver to continue past the bus station. The mob followed the bus in cars, and as the tires on the bus were shot out, someone threw a bomb into the bus. The Freedom Riders escaped the bus as it burst into flames, only to be brutally beaten by members of the surrounding mob. The second bus, the Trailways vehicle, traveled to Birmingham, Alabama, and those riders were also beaten by an angry white mob, many of whom brandished metal pipes. This is African American History is American History. On Sunday, May 14th, Mother's Day, the Freedom Riders arrived in Birmingham. This was after a rough experience in Anniston, Alabama, where one of their buses had been firebombed and burned in an act of violence by members of the Ku Klux Klan. A number of Klan members boarded the new Greyhound bus and beat the riders. By the time they reached the terminal in Birmingham, a larger mob of Klansmen and news reporters were waiting for them. The riders and some of the reporters were beaten viciously with metal bars, pipes, and bats. Bull Connor, who knew exactly where and when the Freedom Riders were to arrive, purposely held back his police force. This allowed the Klan time to rampage, unrestrained, for a full 15 minutes. When the police finally did arrive, not a single arrest was made at the scene. Connor blamed the slow police response on many factors, but the most inventive was the one he gave to the press. There were no policemen in sight as the buses arrived because they were all visiting their mothers on Mother's Day. This has been African American History is American History. I'm Harlan Kearsley. Thank you for listening. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe. Once you do, you'll be notified as soon as new episodes are posted. Thanks again, and please stay safe. African American History is American History. Copyright H.C. Kearsley, 2025.